Okay, here we go. It is the Pittsburgh Hockey Now live chat on the Pittsburgh Hockey Now platforms, and I always do this as a podcast as well. I'm a little disheveled. I literally just ran in the door, threw my laptop in the studio, and plugged it in. I made a very quick slide that I'm going to have Cody Glass talking about Philip Tomasino. Philip Tomasino is on our YouTube page. You can watch his first introduction to the Pittsburgh media. But I wanted to get Cody Glass's take on Tomasino. The two were very close. But, listen, amongst the, so how great is it? And, all of the fluffery in the locker room when a new guy arrives, you know who's going to ask the hockey question, and that's me. So I kind of went right to the heart of the matter when I asked Cody Glass, okay, so tell me about, or what can you tell Tomasino about the transference coming from Nashville to Pittsburgh and the adjustment with the structure? And I thought Cody Glass's answer was extremely interesting to a lot of you. I mean, let's be honest here. We're going to get into a lot of things on the live chat. Mike Sullivan, Mike Sullivan's future, Kyle Dubas's trade, both yesterday, his trade strategy, and quite frankly, his trade history. We're going to have your questions as all of that, we do in the live chat. We have spent, I think, I don't know how many minutes, thousands of words now over the past month, essentially, getting into Mike Sullivan's system, which is more a style of play. And yet it doesn't, sometimes it feels like I'm scattering seeds in a parking lot. I'll be honest about that. We're going to kind of go a little further today because Cody Glass's answer should entirely interest you in terms of how he compared Nashville to the Penguins. How he described Nashville's system is how many of you describe the Penguins system. And how he contrasted the Penguins system is entirely antithetical to what many of you think. And what many of you think is based on the past Penguins systems and style. So I'm working here. Also, Dan's in a foul mood because Dan didn't get necessarily what he wanted on the website today. Didn't get some of the content that I wanted. Some other people kind of didn't produce what they were supposed to produce. And I don't know if any of you have been in management or how many of you. I will tell you straight up, my biggest challenge in managing a company and people is the inability to be honest. You have to be nice. Well, so we can learn for next time. Here's what you really should have done. Even though you haven't, no, Dan wants to say, what the heck were you thinking? You know better. You need to do this and this, not that. Why'd you do this? Don't do that again. And be done with it. That's Dan's internal reaction. So I have to flower it up and be like, okay, just so we're clear for the next time, maybe we should really focus. It's like, I should have been a boss in the 40s or 50s when I could just let rip. I laugh because otherwise I would yell. Okay, so get your comments coming. Here's everything. Should we start with Cody Glass as a springboard into Mike Sullivan? No. I'm going to, in fact, where's my, here's my Mike Sullivan slide. Why, there you go. Let's talk about Mike Sullivan's future here. And me just reading tea leaves, because I know that's where a lot of the questions are going to be. So I'm just going to be proactive here and get ahead of the Sullivan stuff for a minute. And that is, I fully believe that Sullivan is going to be around for a while, based on his press conference Monday and even how he ran practice on Tuesday. because I'm going to tell you something. Sullivan straight up challenged players on Tuesday. He had his big, heavy voice echoing through the UPMC Lemieux facility. And when it starts echoing, you really can't quite hear what he is saying, but he tore into a couple of players on the Penguins' second penalty kill. I mean, he let rip. And they kind of deserved it because it was just a terrible penalty kill against power play number 2. They left the net front wide open. They let Beauvillier go straight to the net unfettered, and Sullivan had enough in that exact moment. And he skated, from like the red line past the blue line, letting somebody know that things were not acceptable. Actually, multiple somebodies. And then he went down to the other end of the ice, power play 1, penalty kill 1. But before he started that next drill with the first units, he came back to the bench where PK2 was sitting and had another go at the apple for a couple of sentences. He was not happy. And then, for the first time this season, and bear in mind, I think I've been at every, maybe I might have missed one practice, but certainly nothing eventful happened in that one. I've been at every morning skate, every practice, every game to this point. By the way, I am the standing Iron Man of the Pittsburgh media at this point, because no one else has been dumb enough to do that. That hasn't happened before until today. Then David Quinn got in on the act on power play 1, stopping the power play drill, yelling about taking good ice. You need to be here. You need to take this. You need to take that. Get here, get there, push and force. And it wasn't done in aesthetically pleasing or Pollyanna sort of tones. It was done, you will do it this way, which is really stark contrast to how coaches ran practice on Monday when they were trying to sweep the room of all the negativity. So they did that, and then they cracked down on Tuesday. Take it for what it's worth. Clearly, Sullivan has a plan. And when a coach is in real trouble, one, you don't usually get the sense of a plan to move forward. When a coach is starting to drown, you can kind of feel it. You almost can smell it, right? I've been through it a few times around different organizations, and there is a certain defiance or pleading, or there's just a different tone when a coach speaks when a coach is in trouble. Sullivan, I don't think, is in trouble today. Now, he's been able to retrench and reset the team. They are making a few changes. New lines as well at practice on Tuesday. We should have those damn things up on the website, and that they're not makes me mad. We'll get there after this live chat. I will race through and get that practice story up. Sullivan needs wins, however, or we will just be right back to where we were Saturday night, Sunday morning. That despair, that disconsolate sort of locker room, that depressing sadness, hopelessness almost. When players are shaking their head saying, we have to get out of this, or we have to find a way. When it graduates to that level, things are bad. They're in deep trouble. Because when they're not that bad, there are specifics. We have to play a better defense. We have to, tighten up this. We can't do that. When things are really bad and a player feels underwater, both with his own game or with the team, that's when it gets to the vague generalities. We have to just find a way. Saturday night, it was, we have to find a way. So we're resetting, retrenching. For those of you just pounding your fist and pounding the table, it's not happening right now. And that's all I got to say about that. Of course, the Penguins did make a trade on Monday, getting Phil Tomasino from the Nashville Predators in exchange for the 4th-round pick that they acquired in the Chad Ruhwedel trade. So on the surface, actually, it's a pretty good trade. If the Penguins had last March traded Chad Ruhwedel for Philip Tomasino, that would have been a heck of a trade. That would have been like, holy cow, that was a good one. It's a little bit different now because Tomasino was himself getting underwater with the Nashville Predators. He hasn't been hurt. He's just been scratched and only played 11 games this season, having just 1 assist on Tuesday. I had to look up, honest to God, I have to look at the top corner of my MacBook to see what day of the week it is. Tomasino was on a line with Evgeny Malkin Tuesday at practice. So it's a pretty good bet that he'll be there Wednesday when the Penguins host the Vancouver Canucks. There were some changes to the lines. And I know you're going to be all mad about the line changes too, where Jesse Puljujärvi and Valtteri Puustinen were out of the lineup. And it's kind of funny. Puljujärvi is 26, but he's got essentially 7-8 years of pro hockey NHL experience. And some people think he's a young player. Some people think he's not. But Puljujärvi is kind of a polarizing figure, at least amongst, I know a lot of my readers and viewers. People kind of project him much higher, or they completely discount him. And the truth is somewhere in the middle. He hasn't been great defensively, but he's also chipped in more offense than anybody expected. So you figure it out. That's where that goes. I'm going to get to Cody Glass now, because we've talked about Sullivan. I hopefully have set the situation and set the stage as accurately as I can. I wrote in full big letters on Sunday. It's got to be Sullivan, or there have to be big changes to the roster, because the collision was just too great to ignore. And the team was going to go into a spiral. I don't have a lot new on that front because I wrote that Sunday. I did the podcast, which went into great depth. If you haven't downloaded the No Pucks Given episode 8 podcast, please do so. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Spotify. It's on Amazon. It's on Apple. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. I'm going to get to Cody Glass here. I'm going to add Glass to the stage with his comments. Obviously, he talks a little, personally about Tomasino. They're really close. Their wife, actually, Glass's wife and Tomasino's girlfriend are very close, and he's really happy about it. I'm going to cut it off after my question and Cody describing the Penguin system, because we're going to pick it up there. So let's see if this works. I guess it's not going to work. Okay. I was trying to get the audio. I wonder why the audio didn't work. Let me try to.
I think just start.
Okay. So the audio is there. Let's try that again. Maybe I have to save it differently. If I save it as PowerPoint presentation, Glass 2. Anyway, so that's not going to happen quickly. I guess I can share screen, and you let me know if you cannot hear the audio. I can't share PowerPoint? Oh, okay. Why should anything go right today? Sure as hell nothing else has. Okay. Anyway, Cody Glass described the Penguins system compared to Nashville. Said Nashville was up-tempo, kind of trying to play fun hockey. That's under coach Andrew Brunette. You know, they're playing on the rush. Compared to the Penguins, where they're playing structured and small. And I just was laughing maniacally when he said that on the inside. Because how many times have I tried to explain that very thing only to kind of have it tossed back at me that, you know, let's get Cody Glass off of there. I will figure this out before the end of the podcast. In fact, no, I'm not going to hold my phone up to the, boy, that didn't look very good either. I'm not going to hold my phone up to the microphone. Looked like Trump dancing there for a second, didn't I? But you get what Glass said. So let's get to the questions here, because I don't feel like doing 90 minutes today. I'm just I mean, quite frankly, you can probably tell I'm a bit cheesed. We have to get to work on the website. We have to get content up, and I have some other decisions to make regarding the business, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see here. Hyperplex says we are smocked. Smooked. I think Hyperplex is trying to say smoked. Oh, I've been there too many times. You keep like typing and your phone just types every other word except the one you want. Okay. I don't get, listen, you can jump to the end of the book here and say, it's smoked. We're done. I'm out. Like one goofball commented on Pittsburgh Hockey Now the other day. Stop writing about the Penguins. It's redundant. It's like, do you have any clue what we do here? This is a Penguins media outlet. We cover the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's it. If you check out, then you're nothing but a bandwagon fan who needs that reflected glory of winning. Have fun, toodles. I am going to cover this from the top of the ocean down to the bottom whenever it hits rock bottom, and then back up. That's just how it goes. I'm going to cover each step of the process. I will cover what the band is playing, where they put the deck chairs. I will talk to the iceberg that the ship hits. I will measure the depth of the water, and I will analyze this thing from every possible angle on the way down and the way up. That's just how we are going to roll. Jake Bacon, what's up, Dan? Jake, what do you think? How do you think? Seriously, folks, punctuation. I have to read this stuff in real time. Do you think Phil will fit in third line center? Good question. Today he was on second line right wing. He is right-handed. And I actually see a path forward in which Tomasino's acquisition will allow Mike Sullivan to repair Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby, which I think the team has not been better. They've been at their best when those two were paired together. The problem was when they're not, when they are paired together, if they're not filling the net that night, then the Penguins lose. The Penguins clearly needed a second line. I don't quite know how Sullivan's going to play this. I really, listen, in the coach's room, I would put Malkin on that top line left wing. I would put Drew O'Connor as the second line center with Tomasino on the right side, and maybe Michael Bunting or Jesse Puljujärvi on the left. And that's what I would do. And then the third line, now that Blake Lizotte is just about healthy, you have more options at center. There are a few things Sullivan could do with that third line center. But for now, let me kind of pull up the lines here. Let me see here. This is part of what made Dan very angry today, that we didn't have this on the website like immediately. So give me a second here. I'm going to pull them up because I can't think of them off the top of my head. Yeah, it was the lines today at practice were Raquel, Crosby, and Rust, Beauvillier, Malkin, and Tomasino. Bunting down to the third line, Blake Lizotte in the middle of the third, and Drew O'Connor on the right of the third line. Mike Sullivan just doesn't like Drew O'Connor in the middle. Face-offs have been a problem. I like O'Connor in the middle. Then the fourth line, Nieto, Achari, and Hayes. Puustinen and Puljujärvi were, in fact, the extras. I'm sure you're going to go nuts when I finally do put that on the website. Let's see here. Gable Fisk. Chris Letang's fall-off has been overlooked this year. Are we allowed to admit that contract was a gigantic mistake? I think I've written specifically more nuanced than that. Being physically fit doesn't mean one can still play. See Gary Roberts. I think there's a lot going on with Chris Letang. He hasn't been bad. Some people have told me he's been bad. I think maybe compared to what he was, yes. I think injuries may be a factor. Kyle Dubas seemed to indicate last April that there were significant injuries catching Chris Letang. But think about this, and this is what I mean, I don't bother asking about injuries because nobody will say a peep. Except Eric Carlson on golf podcasts. Letang only had, I think he was seeking opinions on surgery for other things, but he only had surgery on his pinky, which would not jive with what Dubas said in praising how much he had to do to get over injuries to be ready to play. Yeah, there's a myriad of layers, I think, with Chris Letang's season to this point. Was the contract a mistake? Well, signing him certainly wasn't a mistake. You can see how scarce right-handed defensemen are. The fact that Chad Ruedel got you a fourth-round pick in any year tells you how scarce right-handed defensemen are. The giant mistake, both with Letang and Malkin, wasn't getting their name on a contract or even the amounts. The amounts are fair. And even, you know what? The length of the contracts are fine. If you need to add 6 years to, go 6 years on Letang to get the average annual value to something you could live with, that would have been fine. Hextall's giant mistake, and he's made this several times, is in kind of anchoring himself to the player. In both Malkin and Letang's case, because he structured the deals front-loaded with signing bonuses, they become those unmovable 35-plus contracts. If he just pays Chris Letang the 6.1 or 6.2 every year for 6 years, it's not a 35-plus contract, even though the player would have been over 35 when he signed it. They made that change several years ago. The same thing with Malkin. If they had just paid Malkin the 6 and change without the signing bonuses in the front of the contract, then it would have just been an average contract. And if the player says, you know what, I'm done, or if, you think the player is done, you have recourse. Because there are 35-plus contracts, you have no recourse. So that was the mistake in the Letang contract. I expect Chris Letang to improve at some point this year. when he gets everything sorted and together and everything is gelled, I expect him to improve. Pengu plays. Hey, Dan, your thoughts on what the lineup should be once everyone is healthy? I guess I've touched on that a bit. I would put Crosby and Malkin together. I would put, Drew O'Connor as your second line center. Who would I put as the third line center? I feel like I'm drawing a blank on somebody. I would not put Noel Acciari as the third line center. I might try Kevin Hayes there for a hot minute to see what he's got. I don't think Sullivan has done that too much this season. Maybe it's Tomasino. Actually, as I say it out loud, Cody Glass. Cody Glass would be my third line center with Tomasino on the right and one of the left wings on the left. I don't really think it matters, quite frankly, whether Bunting is on the second line, on the third line, and Rickard Rakell is on, Rickard Rakell on the second line with O'Connor and Tomasino. Or if you put Bunting there for a little bit more grit, drop Rakell down to the third line with Cody Glass. That could be an interesting combination with Jesse Puljujärvi on the right, adding a little bit of size and that. I think I'm talking myself into that. And then the fourth line, my fourth line would be Hayes, Lizotte in the middle with Acciari on the right wing. And I would say, okay, boys, here's your job. Go get them. And their job would be just to hound and pressure and annoy the opposition into submission, get that puck in the offensive zone, get the Crosby-Malkin line on the ice. And I think that actually might be a recipe for success. It surely would take a lot of the pressure off the Penguins, to put it kindly, beleaguered defense. Steve Nash says this team is soft. They need at least one Michael Therrien tirade. Yeah, they kind of got a little bit of a tirade in practice today. It was short-lived, but Sullivan bared his teeth today, no question. Jennifer says teammates not producing what they're supposed to, impacting overall success. Sounds like Penguins hockey to me. Yeah, I really do think, I think the Penguins locker room has to start trusting each other a little bit more. Having said that, there are enough players who have kind of burned, not earned, but burned that trust, leading to other players seeing them in trouble and rushing over to help out, thus leaving their man, and then dominoes start falling. Just click, click, click. And that's what you can't have. You're almost better letting one person get beat and staying with your man than you are leaving your man to try to go help. Because one person gets beat, you still have a goaltender, and depending on where on the ice that is, perhaps some zone play can come into effect. But if two people now leave your man, now you put pressure on a third one to do that, and all hell breaks loose. Jake says, I think Dubas deserves a lot of blame for this too. I hope that my writing has been fair and accurate. I've also been walking towards that water to have a good drink. If we look at Kyle Dubas's trade acquisitions, I put this in the four thoughts on Tuesday morning. Kyle Dubas's trade acquisitions, Erik Karlsson hasn't performed to expectations, certainly hasn't performed up to the Penguins' hopes. Michael Bunting this season has been a healthy scratch. I suppose he's kind of performed to expectations since that healthy scratch, certainly not to the Penguins' hopes, right? And now he's down to the fourth line because his production after, kind of a good handful of games is sliding, as is his play a little bit. He might be a guy who needs kind of a constant sort of kick in the butt to keep going. Kevin Hayes hasn't been nearly as impactful as I think they thought he could be. I really do think Kyle Dubas was acquiring a guy who he saw as a second-line center in Philadelphia, not the guy who was in the press box in St. Louis. And so for Hayes to kind of be straddling fourth-line duty on the wing is disappointing within Dubas's acquisition. Yeah, he got paid to take Kevin Hayes, but that's 2 years at $3.5 million per. That means Hayes also has to produce something unless the team is in an absolute rebuild, which they keep denying that they are. I will stop there and let you dip your cup into the water for yourselves. So yes, I'm still curious to see what Cody Glass has to offer. Analytics darling. I mean, his analytics are off the charts. He was a full go in practice today. I don't think we'll know quite how Cody Glass fits until January, if I'm being honest. I think he'll come back and Sullivan has to find where he fits, and there's still some trial and error to go there. Let me message Shelly. Okay, yeah. Shelly's about to publish a story on Tomasino. She was in the scrum. I was kind of hanging back, just observing. She's writing that story. It'll be on Pittsburgh Hockey Now in a few minutes. Let's go to Brandon. Thoughts on the Penguins being in on Jiricek? Not sure what we have to give that's worth giving, but it sounds like the relationship has soured between player and teams. Perhaps that lowers the cost. It certainly does lower the cost. I don't know if you had a chance to check out my 4 thoughts, Brandon. This is the second time that I've referenced it. Let me post the story here, because I really kind of dug into this today. And this is one of those stories that I think you should, in fact, read. There's the 4 thoughts on the Penguins. Part of one of the 4 notes that I put in the story was, I believe Dubas overpaid for Rutger McGroarty. At the time, I think I was kind of soft on it, and I said, well, it's a steep price to pay. Now, I can be a little more, okay. Now that I have information that Dubas had before the trade, I feel like it's a balanced assessment in saying Dubas overpaid. Winnipeg was going to lose McGroarty for nothing. And Dubas paid full market value by giving up Braden Yeager. I was not high on Yeager's prospect status. I saw some things that I thought the Penguins player development really had to work on with his game. And maybe they came to the conclusion that they weren't going to be able to fix a couple of those things. I don't know. They certainly don't talk about that sort of stuff, especially after the fact. So if Dubas were to come to the table for Jiricek at full value this time, no, the Penguins can't. The Penguins cannot afford David Jiricek from the Columbus Blue Jackets unless they gave up Owen Pickering. To which I would say, no, absolutely not. Hell no. I don't know. I don't know what the market is for him. I haven't personally scouted him. I can't say that I've sat there and paid great attention to his game. What happens in these situations? A lot of people run to the internet. They grab the scouting report, which is most likely his draft day scouting report. He was the 6th overall pick back in 2022. And they kind of make judgments and extrapolations based on 2 years ago and not on 2 days ago. I think I probably was a bit guilty of that with Rutger McGroarty. Obviously, with no chance to scout him, you sort of take it on faith when people tell you things. And McGroarty is struggling at the pro game for various reasons. So, are the Penguins in on Jiricek? I would say absolutely they are. Will they get a discount because the relationship has soured? Probably not, actually, because as Elliot Friedman reported, there are teams sniffing around, and some teams, plural, thought they were getting close. What that does is it keeps the price higher. If nobody was interested, then the price comes down. It's always supply and demand, or at least what the selling general manager can project the demand to be. All right, Kirk Pine from Facebook. I feel it's interesting. The last few times we changed coaches, this team has responded by having huge success. Terry into Bilesma, Bilesma to Sullivan. I could be off base. I love Sullivan. Okay, the past has absolutely no prologue. Sidney Crosby was how old when they changed from Therrien to Bilesma? Sidney Crosby and team and core were how old when they changed from Mike Johnston to Mike Sullivan? They were still very much in their window. Those coaches were failing. The Penguins are not in their window anymore. So, you kind of, those examples have no more relevance to today than saying, listen, when Scotty Bowman took over for Bob Johnston, I almost called him Bob Johnston. No, it's Bob Johnson, Badger Bob. The Penguins went on to win the Stanley Cup. There really is no correlation to today and this team to 16 years ago. And 15 years ago. It's been that long. There's no connection. Sorry, Kirk. There would be a bump. Every team goes through that new coach upswing. When everybody buckles down, everybody's like, okay, let's impress the new guy. I want more playing time. I want this. I want that. And then after a couple of weeks, it just wears off. And the changes the new coach has been able to effect, combined with people just don't think. Everyone asks me to think for them. What was I even saying? This is, you can tell I'm in a sour mood. I don't even know. Oh yeah, the new coach has to affect change, and then what they've implemented, and everything kind of finds its own level. Last year with Edmonton making a coaching change, the hockey world acted mortified that Jay Woodcroft took the fall in Edmonton. But having covered the second round series in 2023 between Vegas and Edmonton, being up close and personal, Woodcroft had been badly outcoached. Period. And I don't think he was necessarily getting the best out of the team, not just because there were holes in the team, but because other coaches were doing things to Woodcroft's system that he didn't necessarily have an adjustment for. Bruce Cassidy certainly did that to Woodcroft, and ultimately it just destroyed Edmonton's confidence in themselves, and they needed to make a change because they were still in their window. If the Penguins were to change coaches, the new coach would have to affect change for the better and get it to stick. If there were a coach out there that I believed could affect this team and get them to play somewhat of a connected defense, I think everybody would sort of jump on that. But it really is a personnel thing more than anything. IR3K. Thanks for doing these, Dan. Listen, they are my pleasure. Some days they're a little bit of a chore, but I do owe it to you all. I mean, you guys have given me a career and a living, and this is one of the ways that I can say thank you, is just to sit here and talk hockey with you. My question is, why is Grzelcyk still playing? He's getting the Jack Johnson treatment, falling upward. Here's the thing with Grzelcyk, and I'm not going to defend the player, because the player has been, I think over the last 10 or 15 games, it has really not played well. You're not incorrect there. Here's the problem. Are you going to put Ryan Graves in the top pairing? Or are you going to put Ryan Shea there? Shea has had his struggles this season. It really becomes a matter of pick your poison. And Sullivan is hoping that Grzelcyk can play himself out of this, become the player that he was, that made him an attractive fit in the first place, rather than somebody who has kind of earned your criticism, IR3K. I don't know what else to tell you besides it really is an unfortunate sort of there are no options sort of play here. The one option Mike Sullivan hasn't tried, which I think a lot of us in the press box have discussed, and we're all kind of, last season, Ryan Shea and Jack St. Ivany formed a wonderfully simple, no frills, but effective defensive pairing. They haven't been tried this year. On paper, it shouldn't work. On the ice, it did. And that is one thing I think that's kind of one button that surprised me that Sullivan hasn't pushed. Other than that, that's actually where the Jiricek acquisition would help, because then Ryan Shea or Grzelcyk or whomever would be free to play the left side. By the way, like and subscribe. I forgot to beg and pander for that too. Let's see here. BJ says, would love Jiricek, but don't want just a 50-50 split with him and St. Ivany in perpetuity. Need an eventual EK65 trade to make room. Yeah. I wonder how that situation is going to play out, because if I'm gonna, let me pull back the curtain here for you all. Erik Karlsson kind of talked to us every day last year, in good times and in bad. Erik Karlsson was there to talk with the media, and he said to me and a couple of us, "Hey, anytime you need me." That has not been the case this season. It's been a far cry, actually. He hasn't been available much in the last few weeks. Now, there were some articles that kind of used his own words against him. He probably saw those and bailed. It is what it is. It's easy to talk until you're getting criticized. And I think he's received a healthy dose of criticism this season. Not exactly unwarranted. We'll see. I very much wonder what he's thinking about this current team. He came here to win a Stanley Cup. And the Penguins are now 2 points out of the basement of the NHL. 3 points, whatever it is. They're cellar dwellers, exactly like he left in San Jose, and he's back to a cellar dweller rather than chasing Lord Stanley. That can't sit well with a guy who's 34 and who desperately wants that cup. BJ continues, I might be in the infinitesimal percentage of Penguins fans that has understood Dubas' approach from day one. Notes, no one could have predicted Graves and Jarry completely tanking. The Jarry thing, I think you're correct. Jarry might have been a soft goalie or, kind of a mediocre number one, but that was acceptable for 5 years at, 5 and change. 5.2, is it? That was an okay contract. Wasn't great. Everybody who hates Jarry or, gets frustrated always runs right to that, but it was average. You're correct. Now the Graves thing is entirely different. How deep do I want to go into this? Why didn't Colorado and New Jersey wrap their arms around a 6'4", 227-pound defenseman who was young? And to further that discussion, why did the Penguins deliver 6 years for a young defenseman that New Jersey, who needed defensemen, was willing to let go? There's always been a little hole in that logic to me somewhere that I'll never get an answer for. I'll just kind of put the question on the table and let you all chew on it. All right, let me get down to some new folks here. Sorry, I'm skipping past. Josh Shaw says, hello. How do the Penguins get blown out so much? I actually have spent 30-minute podcast basically on that entire question, Josh. And it starts with a poorly constructed blue line. I'm not going to impugn all of the defensemen individually. Collectively, they are the worst blue line in the NHL. You combine that with mistake-prone forwards, you've got a recipe for disaster. But it doesn't stop there. Now you've got a couple mistakes that build upon each other. Instead of compound interest, you've got compound mistakes. Compound mistakes lead to compound losses. Compound losses leads to a lack of confidence. Lack of confidence leads to worse losses. Bad losses leads to absolutely quitting. And there you go. I know some of you are like, it's Sullivan's system. To this day, I'm not saying that Mike Sullivan doesn't have a lot of blame, and I'm not saying that Sullivan isn't responsible for perhaps the biggest fault or the biggest problem now that the Penguins have. The biggest problem that the Penguins have achieved is that absolute. They didn't care. They kind of quit on Saturday, and that would get most head coaches, in some very deep trouble. But the Penguins, to this point, are ride or die with Sullivan. So I kind of exclude him from a lot of my thinking only because I know that result. I know that he's going to be the coach until the situation becomes untenable. I think Friday and Saturday's losses, on the heels of blowing a 3-goal lead to San Jose, on the heels of just getting run out of the building against Columbus the previous weekend, I thought it was pretty close to being untenable Saturday night. If Kyle Dubas had had called up FSG and said, this is busted beyond repair, Sullivan, I have to make a change to try to salvage this team, it would not have been incorrect. And I guess that's just where my line is. Something has to give between Sullivan and the roster. There has to be some changes to make this tenable. But it's gonna continue for a little while on that front. Let's see here. Scrolling down. Nick Marshall. Any one of these or anyone else think this is the second iteration of the Pens generation or X generation? Where is Rico Fata when you need him? He has to be better than some of the current players we have. Rico Fata actually was quite a bit like Blake Lizotte in terms of on the ice. Rico Fata's biggest problem was he was drafted 5th overall. And people really always expected Rico Fata, because he was a 5th overall draft pick, to be so much more than he was. If he had been a 4th round pick, oh, heck, he would have been celebrated. But he was kind of always getting paid and always on that track of a 5th overall pick. People kept trying to get that player out of him instead of recognizing he was just a fast and gritty plugger. If they had just used him in that regard, he might have been a fan favorite, quite frankly. But no, this does not remind me of Generation Next or X Generation. That's what it was called. It was X Generation. It doesn't remind me because that X Generation team had no talent. None. Marty Straka traded. Alexei Kovalev traded. Robert Lang left via free agency. Mario Lemieux was just kind of hobbling through to sell some tickets. They were trying to get by with Milan Kraft, Alexei Morozov, Guillaume Lefebvre. Remember him? Who else? Eric Malash. They were just, they were brutal. So no, that team was built on bubblegum and paper clips because that was all the Penguins could afford in a non-salary cap era when you had the Red Wings and the Rangers. Think about this. Adjusting for inflation and adjusting for the hockey economy of like 2001 through 2004, the Rangers and Red Wings had payrolls approaching $100 million more than 20 years ago. Just think of how expensive those teams were compared to the Penguins that were scrapping and clawing to make a $9 million payroll. I think it was like a $9 million. Well, am I underselling the Penguins? I think it was about 9. Because Craig Patrick was just trolling the AHL, trying to find those 4A players. He actually found a few, by the way. Randy Robitaille would be a prime example of a guy he kind of claimed off the scrap heap and who got some NHL opportunities and stuck around for several years, both with the Penguins and then the Ottawa Senators. I think somewhere else too. Joseph says, trade Dubas. This is Dubas's second of a 7-year contract. Let's see here. Adam on Facebook. Here's a question. Do you think the people who own the Penguins, that's FSG, care whether they win or lose, or did they invest in order to make money off ticket sales for the many milestone games in the final Malkin, Letang, Crosby years? Judging by the refusal to change either the roster or the coach, I don't get the feeling they're interested. You're in the right church, but the wrong pew, Adam. I'm not going to say they don't care. They have different priorities. They are a very money-driven, bottom-line team. But they are infinitely smarter than Bob Nutting, who owns the Pirates, because FSG also knows that you have to be competitive, especially in hockey. If they don't know this, and by the way, I don't think when FSG bought the Penguins, they knew a lick about the NHL or the structure. I think they were just looking at spreadsheets and saying, okay, bear in mind, the Penguins' greatest asset when FSG bought them was not Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. No. Those are actually those are depreciating assets. I'm going to start talking like a financial advisor now, because that's what we're really getting into with FSG. These are hedge fund guys. No, they saw acres of land in downtown Pittsburgh that were owned and operated by the Penguins. The city remains infinitely frustrated that the Hill District development isn't done 5 years ago. Now, city leaders and some other community organizers have kind of got in the way of development. Whether they're wrong or they're right, I'm not getting into, because like everything else in life, it's a gray answer. Right about this, wrong about that. It's not happening nearly as quickly as anybody would like. But when it's done, FSG is going to have this giant arena district that they own. Very much like if you've been to Columbus, surrounding the arena. Very much like Bob Nutting and the Steelers and the Rooneys have with PNC and Acrisure Stadium. I don't know how many of you know all of those restaurants on Federal Street and Tony Dorsett Boulevard and coming around. All of those restaurants and Stage AE are owned by those sports owners. They all pay rent. Southern Tier and Voodoo, and what's the other place now with the duck pin bowling that charged me like $75? They all pay rent to Bob Nutting and Art Rooney II, third. That's going to be the situation that FSG is, going to eventually have. And that's why they bought the team. If that land doesn't exist, they are not buying the team for $950 million or $900 million, or I've heard a few numbers. Let's just go with 900. Do they care? Yes. Are they living and dying on wins and losses? No, they are decidedly not. They are winning and losing based on the bottom line, which is impacted by wins and losses. So have I explained it well, Adam? I hope so. How long have I done? I've done an hour already. Let's see here. Okay, I got some crosstalk. Let me scroll past that. Georgia says, oh my God, it's raining somewhere. It's Tanger's fault. Chris Letang could be a lot better this season, but he also could be worse. Oh, Valtteri Puustinen on waivers. That's not... Okay, so yeah, I guess that's what Shelly was asking me, if she should do that story. Yes. Let's see here. Forward coming back from injury or trade. Yes, BJ, both Blake Lizotte and Cody Glass are in the final stage of their concussion protocol. And Mike Sullivan, I thought, was kind of brutally honest on Monday when he talked about Valtteri Puustinen, saying he needs to make an impact. Puustinen he's a nice kid. I know a lot of you were really rooting for him because he was a 7th-round draft pick, made good all the way to the NHL and put up big points in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton. But at the NHL level, listen, he was put in third-line opportunities. And he really did have a problem, as Sullivan noted, of blending into the game without making an impact. And, you know, what was he kind of became just a guy who didn't score, who didn't provide anything beyond just kind of filling that space. And he'll go back to Wilkes-Barre. I don't expect him to get claimed. Maybe so. And hopefully kind of work on that of bringing it, shift in, shift out, finding space, getting that shot off quickly, and learning how to score between the dots instead of kind of playing outside them. Let's see here. Sarah, don't we have enough sports psychologists for this? I'm not sure what you're referring to, what I was referring to. Jake has a good question. Could Emil Bemstrom get a call up? I certainly see that he's filling the net down in Wilkes-Barre. I don't know how he's doing it, though, and that's really important. Is he scoring good goals between the dots, earning them, or is he taking advantage of AHL goalies and whipping a wrist shot behind the dot? You know, those sorts of perimeter goals you get in the AHL versus not getting in the NHL. I don't know. I haven't watched any Wilkes-Barre games to know that yet. And there's my answer. If he's scoring good goals, yes. He can skate well. He's got NHL experience. He's kind of a big boy. He's not a shrimp. Trades should be made while you can make them. Well, yeah. See here, Master Legacy. Has Sid flat out called out these players? If he hasn't, it sure is time for it. That's not Sidney Crosby. There were a handful of games ago, and I forget which one now, where Crosby kind of read the boys the riot act on the bench. That was a big departure for Crosby, but he really is a lead by example, bring everybody together community captain. I certainly do think there has been some internal call-outs. Chris Letang alluded to a team-only meeting and saying everybody had the floor. You know, it's like you have to be able to say it. I feel like Sam Kinison. Say it! Say it! Michael on Facebook, it can. Oh, a coaching change. Look what it did for Edmonton last year. Hopefully I explained that. The difference in situations where Jay Woodcroft was getting out-coached, and there were some significant flaws in that situation. How do I drive this point home? Because hockey fans, and I'm not saying you guys, I'm just saying hockey fans in general, when things aren't going well, change the coach. We'll win again. And it is so much more complicated than that. That's like if your car breaks down, saying change the battery. Well, if your engine had no oil in it, or if the car is out of gas or whatnot, you might get a jump with a new battery. It might overcome that problem for a moment, but that car's problem is just going to come roaring back and break down on the highway right away. Changing the coach to get that boost only helps for the duration of that boost. And then you're stuck with the consequences of that change. Mike Sullivan very well might need to be part of the change. And I mean, you know, kind of, he might very well not need to be the coach anymore. If the losing continues with the exasperated depression that we've seen over the last 10 days, 2 weeks, you can't keep that kind of coach because the situation just collapses upon itself. And no matter how good the coach is, you're not going to coach your way out of that. This is why roster changes are needed, so that, it doesn't collapse. You have some new blood to try to blossom rather than collapse. Short of that, however, it is. But you can't be like, we need a new coach to get that boost, because that boost is very temporary. And you really can't compare the Penguins to Edmonton, because look at the roster differences. My goodness, there's huge roster differences. And they needed to play a different style in Edmonton. They really did. Woodcroft would just get frustrated and pair his top two players, Leon Draisaitl and McDavid, together and hope that they could overcome. And they also wrote a great power play. I'm drawing a blank on the coach's name. You'll have to forgive me. The guy from Erie. But he sort of fixed some things. Let's see here. John asked, I don't mean to sound thick, but when we talk about Sully's system, what exactly is his system? Great question, John. I am not going into it at 106 of this live video. You're going to have to go into Francis Anzalone's Coaches Debrief videos, go into some of the stuff we've written about the system in very, very broad strokes for you. The Penguins have evolved from that rush team. And we're talking style of play, not necessarily system specifics here. A rush team up and down to a small area, gritty, structured attack. Now, the defensive scheme, style, is all about the sort out, the track back, when each individual player has essentially a system of decisions. Okay, I'm the F1, which means I'm the first forward back. I go to this area and take that guy. I'm responsible to prevent the center drive, or I'm responsible to prevent this area. F2 might be responsible for the puck carrier or taking, a different tact. And F3 has to understand, okay, I'm the last person back. I need to seal the top of the zone so that the defenseman isn't wide open and can't walk into the slot. That's the sort out. All five players figuring out where they are on the ice and who's responsible for who. It has become a fire drill, a preschool fire drill at times for these Penguins. And that's been the problem. Despite, very clear X, Y, Z, if, then, else, there's a lot of mistake-prone players who just haven't taken their guy, or as you saw on the first goal Saturday. That was, who scored that for Utah? Darn it. It's been several days, and these games all just run together for me. Regardless of who it was, first Graves chases the puck to the corners. He's kind of losing his battle, and he's a bit behind his man. Grzelcyk is in front of the net where he should be. He sees Graves chasing the puck. He drifts. He sees Graves losing his battle. He chases too. Now look, now there's nobody in front of the net. Sidney Crosby was on his man in the slot because Sid at that point was the F1. So he's, playing low. He sees his defenseman going out to lunch, basically. They're having a picnic. And so he races to try to cut off the backdoor pass, but it didn't happen in time. I mean, if Sid recognizes that both defensemen completely screwed up, and he gets down to the back post to cut off that pass, well, the pass doesn't happen. Instead, Crosby's guy in the slot is wide open. And so this is the cascading dominoes. But if we're talking stylistically, John, Sullivan's system is much more structured. It's about getting the puck, into open areas of the ice, winning those puck battles on the wall, in the corner, getting to the net. It's a very gritty Sidney Crosby-esque game. It's not the rush game that they, in their heart, really want to play. I hope that's at least a primer for you to kind of dig into it with some of the other videos and some of the other writings that I've done. And I think I've made no secret. It frustrates me to no end when people say his system is the problem. And then I say, okay, what part of the system? Well, you have to change. Okay, what part? Hockey coaches and the game of hockey does an absolutely terrible job. Actually, they don't even try in the least to educate fans and explain what the hell is going on. I understand when new fans, like Midwestern fans who grew up playing basketball, look at hockey and go, what is this? It's a jumbled mess, and they just see whirring colors and don't understand the game. I get it. I mean, obviously, you and I have probably been watching hockey for most of our lives because we're in Pittsburgh or a northeastern city, exposed to the game. Let's just say a fan in Dallas. You can't expect them to understand the core tenets of the game if coaches won't talk about it. I'm going to take one more question, but I'm going to tell you this Bruce Cassidy story. When I covered the Vegas Golden Knights 2023 Cup run from mid-April through the end of June, and I was, essentially living at the Oyo Hotel just off the Strip. I had a suite, so at least I had some space to sit down, not just on my bed and watch some TV or go out to eat. It is Vegas. The greatest quote Bruce Cassidy gave me, because I started asking questions. I shut up for a while. I learned and I observed and I started asking some questions. I figured I was there long enough. And I was so taken aback by his forthright and openness. I mean, Mike Sullivan is probably one of the most closed off coaches, and Cassidy might be the most open coach. That was culture shock for me. And Cassidy's great quote one day was he's like, listen, other teams watch video. There's no secret to what we're doing. And I was like, hallelujah. And so he kind of went into the X's and O's of the Vegas system. And I was just, figuratively there with a spoon, just lapping it up. I was loving it. I had more fun covering that team, not just because they were in a cup run, but because of the available information that I could get and convey to Vegas fans. I mean, listen, there's the reason that a lot of the Vegas fans, when I still write, will come over and read Pittsburgh stuff. When I do occasionally write on Vegas hockey now, they'll read because we formed a good relationship there in those few months. And if there were a second Dan in Pittsburgh, I'm just saying. Anyway, let's see here. What should be my final question? I've got tons here. Okay, so NAS 26, I'm going to kind of debunk this. Dubas is scouting Montreal for Team Canada more than a Penguins trade. If that were true, NAS, staff wouldn't be going there too. Oh, Jack McBain. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, Jack McBain was the Utah player who was just, couldn't believe his good fortune and how wide open he was. Let's see here. We'll end on this one. David Jones. Since Dubas has scouted Jiricek, could Jack St. Ivany be in play? Or maybe Tanger is on his way to Montreal? I think that's all very good speculation. I myself wondered about Jack St. Ivany. If St. Ivany were on the table, he would have to start playing in some games. Columbus is going to want to see him play. St. Ivany's had a rough year. They're the sophomore jinx in which he was trying to do too much. He was trying too hard. He was playing. He always played a tight gap. I like that very much about him last season. He used his size and reach to play a tight gap on the blue line, which nullified, negated a lot of rushes and chances against. This year, that tight gap became a problem as he was getting beat. He was making turnovers, and there was a lot of stuff. By the way, like, subscribe, please. So I would expect St. Ivany to play some games if he were indeed on the table. I would hope very much that Owen Pickering playing games is not a sign that he is on the table. That would be a mistake. That would be a significant mistake. All right. Is there anything else I need to trade Rutger McGroarty for Trevor Zegras? Montreal won't trade. Okay. Chris Knobloch, that's the guy from Erie. Thank you very much. Honestly, when I'm sitting here doing these just off the cuff, they can be tough. Okay, kids, that was an hour 15. I wanted to do 45 because I have stories to write and get on to Pittsburgh hockey. Now I've got to fix up a lot of stuff and get the content to you. These are fun. We will do it again next week. I'll have a podcast up probably Friday. Maybe I have to wait till Sunday because of the weird, Thanksgiving and then games back to back. The schedule is just wonky. And I hate to do podcasts before games because after the games, everything has changed. Everything has been really fluid lately. Like, subscribe, check out Pittsburgh Hockey Now. Hey, by the way, secret, PHN Plus is on sale right now for half off, $19.99. Go subscribe. Go to Pittsburgh Hockey Now, subscribe, $19.99. If it's not up, yell at me because my web guy was supposed to make that change today. $20 the whole year of me running around the country, knocking myself silly. I mean, come on. If you're going to pay like $15 for a McDonald's meal, supersized, I'm worth $20, right? Hey, thanks a lot. We'll do it again soon. Have fun.